The wagon rattled into Silver Creek just as the sun began its descent behind the Montana mountains, painting the sky in shades of amber and crimson. Sarah Mitchell pressed her hand against her swollen belly, feeling the child within her shift and turn. 6 months along, and every mile of the journey from Boston had been harder than the last. She'd heard the whispers before she even stepped down from the wagon. The driver, a grizzled man named Potter, had made sure everyone in town knew her story before she arrived. Unmarried, pregnant, alone. "That's her," someone muttered from the boardwalk. "The one carrying a bastard child." Sarah lifted her chin, refusing to let them see her flinch. She'd learned long ago that showing weakness only invited more cruelty. Her hand trembled as she gathered her single-worn carpetbag, but she kept her face composed, almost serene. The town of Silver Creek wasn't much to look at. A single main street lined with weathered buildings, their paint peeling in the harsh mountain sun. The hotel stood at the far end, a 2-story structure that looked like it might collapse in a strong wind, but it was the only option she had. As she walked toward it, the wooden sidewalk creaked beneath her feet. Women pulled their children closer, as if her condition might be contagious. Men stared openly, their eyes traveling over her rounded form, with mixtures of contempt and something darker that made her skin crawl. "Room for the night," she said quietly when she reached the hotel clerk, a thin man with spectacles perched on his nose. He looked her up and down, his lip curling. "We don't rent to your kind." "My kind?" Sarah's voice remained steady despite the hammer of her heart. "I'm a paying customer with money in hand. Decent folk stay here. Go find somewhere else." She stood there for a long moment, feeling the weight of every eye in the lobby on her back. Then she turned and walked out, her head still high, her carpetbag clutched in her white-knuckled grip. The general store was no better. The seamstress shop turned her away before she could even speak. By the time the sun touched the horizon, Sarah found herself sitting on a bench outside the closed mercantile, her feet aching and her resolve beginning to crack. She'd come here on a desperate hope. A letter from a distant cousin who'd promised help, a fresh start. But when she'd arrived at the address, she'd found an empty house with boards across the windows. Her cousin had moved on months ago, leaving no forwarding address. Now she was stranded in a town that wanted nothing to do with her, with night falling fast and nowhere to go. "You can't sleep there." Sarah looked up to find the sheriff standing over her, his hand resting on the gun at his hip. He wasn't old, maybe 35, with a hard face that had seen too much. "I wasn't planning to sleep here, Sheriff. I was just resting. Town council doesn't want trouble. Best you move along before dark." "Move along where?" The question escaped before she could stop it, tinged with exhaustion and desperation. "Every door in this town has been slammed in my face." Something flickered in the sheriff's eyes. Might have been pity, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared. "Not my problem, ma'am. Just doing my job." He walked away, leaving her alone on the bench as the shadows grew longer. Sarah had never felt more alone in her life. Not when her father had thrown her out of their Boston home, calling her names that still echoed in her nightmares. Not when the baby's father had laughed in her face and told her to take care of it herself. Not even during the long, frightening journey west, when she'd been so sick she thought she might lose the child. But here, in this dusty Montana town, surrounded by strangers who looked at her like she was something dirty to be scraped off their boots, she felt the first real tear in her carefully maintained composure. A single tear traced down her cheek, then another. She was crying when she heard the horse. The sound of hoofbeats was different from the usual traffic in town, heavier, slower, deliberate. Sarah wiped her eyes quickly, not wanting whoever it was to see her weakness. When she looked up, she saw him. He sat astride a massive black stallion, a man so large he seemed to block out the dying sun, 6.5 feet tall if he was an inch, with shoulders broad enough to carry the weight of the world. His face was hard, carved from granite with a scar running from his left temple to his jaw. Dark eyes, cold as a winter storm, swept over the street before landing on her. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. She'd heard about him during her brief time in Silver Creek. Colton Drake, the most feared man in the territory. They said he'd killed 15 men, maybe more. They said he'd been a Confederate soldier who'd learned to enjoy the killing. They said his ranch, up in the mountains, was where lawless men went to hide and where decent folk never ventured. He was watching her with those cold, dark eyes, and Sarah felt fear crawl up her spine. Then He dismounted. The man moved with surprising grace for someone so large, his boots hitting the dirt with solid thuds. He tied his horse to the hitching post and walked toward her, each step measured and purposeful. Sarah wanted to run, but her feet wouldn't move. She could only sit there, frozen, as this mountain of a man approached. He stopped a few feet away, looking down at her. Up close, he was even more intimidating. His shoulders were impossibly wide, his hands the size of dinner plates. He wore a black shirt and dark pants, a gun belt slung low on his hips. Everything about him screamed danger. "You're the woman who came in on the afternoon wagon," he said. His voice was deep, rough like gravel, with a hint of something southern beneath it. Sarah nodded, not trusting her voice. "They turned you away from everywhere." It wasn't a question, but she answered anyway. "Yes." He stood there, studying her with those penetrating dark eyes. She felt exposed, vulnerable, like he could see right through to her soul and all the secrets she carried. "How far along are you?" The question was so direct, so unexpected, that Sarah blinked. 6 months. "The father?" "Gone." The word came out bitter. "He made it clear he wants nothing to do with me or the child." Colton Drake nodded slowly, as if this confirmed something he already knew. Then he did something that shocked her to her core. He held out his hand. "Come with me." Sarah stared at his outstretched hand like it might be a trap. "Why?" "Because it's getting dark. You have nowhere to go, and you're carrying a child." His voice softened, just a fraction. "No woman should be left on the street in your condition." I don't know you." "Name's Colton Drake. I own the Triple D Ranch up in the mountains. I'm offering you a place to stay tonight, food and a bed. Nothing more." Sarah's mind raced. She'd heard the stories about this man, about the violence and the danger, but she'd also heard whispers of something else, things the women said when they thought no one was listening, that for all his fearsome reputation, Colton Drake had never hurt a woman, that he protected those who couldn't protect themselves, even if his methods were brutal. And what choice did she have? Sleep in the street? Try to walk to the next town, miles away, in the dark while 6 months pregnant? She placed her hand in his. His palm was warm, calloused, and so large her hand disappeared completely. He helped her to her feet with surprising gentleness, then picked up her carpet bag as if it weighed nothing. "Can you ride?" he asked. Not really." "You'll ride with me then." He led her to the massive black stallion. "His name's Thunder. He looks mean, but he's gentle as a lamb if you don't spook him." Before Sarah could protest, Colton lifted her onto the saddle as easily as if she were a child. Then he swung up behind her, his arms coming around her to take the reins. Sarah had never been so close to a man like this. She could feel the solid wall of his chest against her back, the warmth of him seeping through her thin dress. He smelled of leather and pine and something masculine that made her heart beat faster. "Hold on," he murmured near her ear. And then they were moving. The ride through town was the longest of Sarah's life. She felt every eye on them, heard the gasps and whispers. Colton Drake, the feared outlaw rancher, with the pregnant stranger everyone had rejected. By morning, the whole territory would know, but Colton seemed unbothered by the stares. He kept Thunder at a steady walk until they cleared the edge of town, then urged the horse into an easy canter. "How far is your ranch?" Sarah asked, her voice barely audible over the sound of hoofbeats. "About an hour's ride." "You comfortable enough?" Yes, it was the truth. Despite everything, despite her fear and uncertainty, she felt oddly safe in the circle of his arms. They rode in silence as the last light faded from the sky. The trail climbed steadily into the mountains, following a creek that sparkled in the moonlight. Pine trees rose on either side, their scent heavy in the cool night air. Sarah had never seen stars like this. In Boston, the city lights had dimmed them, but here they blazed across the sky in a river of light. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Colton's voice rumbled behind her. "Yes," she whispered. "I've never seen anything like it." "City girl?" "Boston, long way from home. I don't have a home anymore." The words slipped out before she could stop them. His arms tightened slightly around her, not threatening, almost protective. "Everyone deserves a home." They rode on in silence after that. Sarah felt her eyelids growing heavy, the exhaustion of the day catching up with her. Without meaning to, she found herself leaning back against Colton's chest, her head resting just below his chin. She expected him to push her away, but instead his arms shifted, supporting her more firmly. "Sleep if you need to," he said quietly. "I won't let you fall." And despite everything, despite the fact that this man was a stranger, that she was riding through the dark Montana wilderness toward an unknown fate, Sarah believed him. She closed her eyes and let the rhythm of the horse lull her towards sleep. She woke when they stopped. "We're here," Colton said softly. Sarah blinked, trying to focus in the darkness. She could make out the shape of a large house, 2 stories with a wide porch. Lamplight glowed in the windows, warm and welcoming. Beyond it, she could see the dark shapes of barns and outbuildings. Colton dismounted and lifted her down, his hand spanning her waist. For just a moment, they stood close enough that she could see the details of his face in the moonlight. The scar, the hard line of his jaw, the surprising softness in his dark eyes. "Thank you," she whispered, "for helping me." Something flickered across his face, too quick to identify. "Come on, let's get you fed and settled." The interior of the house surprised her. She'd expected rough, masculine furnishings, but instead found comfortable furniture, clean floors, and curtains on the windows. It was clearly a man's house, but someone had taken care to make it livable. "Martha!" Colton called out. A woman appeared from the back of the house, wiping her hands on her apron. She was perhaps 50, with grey-streaked hair and kind eyes that went wide when she saw Sarah. "Lord have mercy, Colton, who's this?" "Sarah Mitchell. She needs a room for the night and some food. Can you help her get settled?" Martha's eyes dropped to Sarah's pregnant belly, and understanding dawned on her face. But unlike everyone else in Silver Creek, there was no judgment in her expression. Only sympathy. "Of course. The poor dear looks exhausted. Come with me, honey. Let's get you comfortable." Sarah followed Martha up the stairs, acutely aware of Colton's eyes on her back. When she glanced over her shoulder, he was standing in the hallway, watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. The room Martha showed her to was simple but clean, with a real bed covered in quilts and a window overlooking the mountains. There was even a small basin with fresh water. "Mr. Drake's sister used to live here," Martha explained as she lit the lamp, "before she got married and moved to California. He's kept her room ready, just in case she ever comes back to visit. You rest here tonight, and we'll figure everything out in the morning." "I can't thank you enough," Sarah said, her voice thick with emotion. "Everyone in town—" "I know, honey, I know." Martha patted her hand gently. "Small towns can be cruel to women in your situation, but you're safe here. Mr. Drake may look scary, but he's got a good heart. Now, you sit down, and I'll bring you some supper." True to her word, Martha returned with a tray of food: beef stew, fresh bread, and apple pie. Sarah ate ravenously, not realizing how hungry she'd been until the food was in front of her. She was finishing the pie when there was a soft knock on the door. "Come in," she called, expecting Martha, but it was Colton who entered, his large frame filling the doorway. He had to duck slightly to avoid hitting his head on the frame. "Feeling better?" he asked. "Yes, thank you. The food was wonderful." He nodded, then seemed to struggle with something. Finally, he moved into the room, pulling up a chair and sitting down. Even seated, he was imposing, his broad shoulders and large hands drawing her eye. "We need to talk," he said, "about your situation." Sarah's stomach tightened. "I'll leave in the morning. I know I can't stay here. It wouldn't be proper." "That's not what I meant." He leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, his dark eyes intent on her face. "I heard what happened in town, how they treated you, how they'll keep treating you if you stay in Silver Creek." "I know. I'll find somewhere else to go." "Where? Another town where the same thing will happen? Another place where you'll be turned away because you're carrying a child alone?" The truth of his words hit her like a physical blow. He was right. This would follow her everywhere she went. "I don't know," she whispered. "I don't know what to do." Colton was quiet for a long moment, studying her face. Then he said something that changed everything. "Marry me." Sarah's head snapped up, certain she'd misheard. "What?" "Marry me," he repeated, his voice calm, matter-of-fact. "We'll tell everyone the child is mine, that we've been involved for months, that I sent for you to come here. But that's not true, and why would you?" "Because I know what it's like to be rejected by everyone around you." His voice went rough, painful. "To have doors slammed in your face, to be looked at like you're something dirty, something shameful. No one should have to live like that. especially not a woman carrying a child. You don't even know me. I know enough. I know you're brave enough to travel across the country alone. I know you're strong enough to hold your head high when everyone treats you like dirt. I know you love that child enough to endure anything for them." He paused. That's more than most people can say. Sarah's mind was reeling. This is insane. You can't just marry a stranger. Why not? People marry strangers all the time out here. Mail-order brides, arranged marriages. At least this way you'd have a home. Security. The child would have a name. And what would you get out of it? Something dark and lonely flickered in his eyes. A chance to do something good. To protect someone who needs it. I've done enough bad in my life. Maybe this evens the scales a little. I can't ask you to do this. You're not asking. I'm offering. He stood up, his height making the room feel suddenly smaller. Think about it. Sleep on it. In the morning, if you want to leave, I'll take you anywhere you want to go. But if you stay, if you agree to this, I promise you'll be safe. The child will be safe. You'll want for nothing. He moved toward the door, then paused, looking back at her. One more thing. This would be a marriage in name only. I wouldn't expect anything from you. You'd have your own room, your own space. I'd never touch you unless you wanted me to. Then he was gone, leaving Sarah alone with the lamplight and her racing thoughts. She lay awake most of the night, her mind spinning. Marry Colton Drake, the most feared man in the territory. A man rumored to have killed more men than she could count. A man who was offering her salvation when everyone else had turned their backs. But what kind of life would it be? Trapped in a marriage with a stranger, living a lie. Then again, what were her other options? Go back east where her father would never take her back. Try another town where she'd face the same rejection. Try to raise a child alone with no money, no support, no hope. She pressed her hand to her belly, feeling the baby move beneath her palm. What should I do? She whispered to the life growing inside her. What's best for you? The baby kicked. A strong, solid movement that made her smile despite everything. She thought about Colton's face when he'd made his offer. There had been no pity in his eyes. No judgment, just a quiet understanding that spoke of his own pain, his own rejection. Maybe they could help each other. Maybe two broken people could build something whole. As the first light of dawn crept through the window, Sarah made her decision. She found Colton in the barn, grooming Thunder. He looked up when she entered, his expression carefully neutral. Waiting. "I'll do it," Sarah said. "I'll marry you." Something that might have been relief crossed his face. "You're sure?" "No," she admitted. "But I'm out of options, and you're offering me and my baby a chance at a real life. So yes, I'll marry you." He set down the brush and walked toward her, stopping a respectful distance away. "We'll do it today. I'll ride into town, get the preacher. The sooner we're married, the sooner the gossip will settle down. They'll know it's a lie, they'll do the math when the baby comes. Let them. A baby born 7 months into a marriage. People will whisper, but they can't prove anything. And once you're my wife, no one will dare say anything to your face." The certainty in his voice sent a shiver through her. This was a man used to being obeyed, feared. "Colton," she said softly, "why are you really doing this?" He was quiet for a long moment, his dark eyes searching hers. 5 years ago, I came back from the war. I'd done things, terrible things, things that still wake me up at night. When I got home, everyone looked at me like I was a monster. Maybe they were right. He moved to the barn door, looking out at the mountains. I built this ranch with my own hands, tried to build a new life, but the reputation followed me. People cross the street when they see me coming. Women grab their children and hurry away. I'm alone out here because that's what I deserve. I don't believe that," Sarah found herself saying. He glanced back at her, surprise flickering in his eyes. "You don't even know me. I know you took me in when everyone else turned me away. I know you're offering to claim a child that isn't yours so we can both have a better life. That doesn't sound like a monster to me." For the first time since she'd met him, Colton smiled. It transformed his face, softening the hard edges, making him look younger, almost vulnerable. "Maybe you're right," he said quietly. "Or maybe we're both just two people trying to survive." The preacher arrived that afternoon, a thin man named Reverend Matthews, who looked nervous the entire time. Colton had clearly made it worth his while to keep quiet about the rushed wedding. Martha served as witness, along with one of Colton's ranch hands, a grizzled man named Buck, who had kind eyes and didn't ask questions. Sarah wore the best dress she had, a simple blue cotton that was getting tight around her middle. Someone, probably Martha, had put wildflowers in a vase on the mantel. The ceremony was brief, almost businesslike. When it came time to exchange rings, Colton produced a simple gold band that had belonged to his mother. "I promise to honor and protect you," he said, as he slid it onto her finger. His hands were shaking, just slightly. "For as long as you need me." The words weren't part of the standard ceremony, but they felt more real than any traditional vow. When the preacher pronounced them man and wife, Colton leaned down and pressed a chaste kiss to Sarah's forehead. It was over in a heartbeat, but she felt the warmth of his lips long after he'd pulled away. "Well," Martha said brightly when the preacher had gone, "I'll leave you two to get settled." She bustled out of the room, leaving Sarah and Colton standing awkwardly in the parlor. "I should show you around the ranch," Colton said finally, "if you're feeling up to it." "I'd like that." They walked the property together, Colton pointing out the barns, the pastures, the creek that ran through the valley. He had cattle, horses, and a few sheep. It was a working ranch, profitable, well-maintained. "You built all this yourself?" Sarah asked, "with help from Buck and a few other hands. Took 3 years to get it running right." "It's beautiful." He looked at her, really looked at her, and something warm flickered in his eyes. "Yeah, it is." They were near the creek when Sarah stumbled on a loose rock. Instantly, Colton's arm was around her waist, steadying her. His hand splayed across her swollen belly, supporting her weight. "Careful," he murmured. "Can't have you falling." Sarah froze, intensely aware of how close they were standing. His chest was against her back, his arm supporting her, his hand warm on her belly. She could feel his breath on her neck, hear the steady beat of his heart. "The baby's kicking," she whispered. "I can feel it." There was wonder in his voice. "Strong little thing, isn't it?" "Very strong." She covered his hand with hers, guiding it to where the baby was most active. "There. Feel that?" "Yeah." His voice had gone rough, emotional. "I feel it." They stood like that for a long moment, the sun warm on their faces, the sound of the creek bubbling nearby. It felt intimate, almost sacred. Then Sarah pulled away, suddenly shy. "We should head back. I'm getting tired." "Of course." Colton offered his arm, and she took it, letting him guide her back to the house. That night, true to his word, Colton retired to his own room after dinner. Sarah lay in the bed that had been his sister's, staring at the ceiling and wondering what she'd gotten herself into. She was married now, to a man she barely knew, living a lie that could unravel at any moment. But as she drifted towards sleep, her hand resting on her belly, she felt something she hadn't felt in months. Safe. The weeks that followed settled into a comfortable routine. Sarah woke each morning to find breakfast already made, courtesy of Martha, who came in daily to cook and clean. Colton was usually out working the ranch, but he always returned for the noon meal, sitting across from her at the table and making quiet conversation. He was careful never to touch her unnecessarily, always keeping a respectful distance. But Sarah found herself watching him, noticing things, the way his hands were gentle with the horses, the way he spoke softly to the animals, patient and kind, the way he looked at her when he thought she wasn't paying attention, his dark eyes filled with something she couldn't quite name. One morning, Sarah woke before dawn to find the house quiet and still. She wrapped a shawl around her shoulders and padded downstairs, drawn by the smell of coffee. Colton was sitting at the kitchen table, a cup in his massive hands, staring out the window at the pre-dawn darkness. He looked tired, shadows under his eyes. "Couldn't sleep?" Sarah asked softly. He turned, surprise flickering across his face. "Did I wake you?" "No, the baby's been restless." She moved to pour herself some water, then hesitated. "May I sit with you?" "Of course. This is your home too." Sarah settled into the chair across from him, studying his face in the lamplight. "Nightmares?" He didn't answer right away, just stared down into his coffee cup. Finally, he nodded. "Sometimes I dream about the war, about the things I did, the men I killed." "Do you want to talk about it?" "Not much to say. I was a different person back then. Angry, lost. I thought killing for a cause made it noble, made it right." His voice went rough. "I was wrong." Sarah reached across the table and placed her hand over his. His fingers were warm, solid, real. "You're not that man anymore," she said quietly. "How do you know? You've only known me a few weeks." "I know because of how you treat your animals, how you speak to Martha with respect, how you've never once made me feel unsafe even though you could." She squeezed his hand. "And I know because you have nightmares. Monsters don't regret what they've done." Colton looked at her then, really looked at her, and something shifted in his expression. "You have more faith in me than I deserve. Maybe you deserve more than you think." They sat like that, As the sun began to rise, hands linked across the table, connected by an understanding that went deeper than words. The days grew warmer as spring settled over the Montana mountains. Sarah found herself increasingly drawn to Colton's quiet strength, his gentle ways, the small kindnesses he showed without even seeming to realize it. One afternoon, she was struggling to hang laundry on the line, her pregnant belly making it difficult to reach. Before she could protest, Colton was there, taking the wet sheets from her hands. "Let me," he said simply. "I can do it. I know you can, but you don't have to." He hung the sheet with efficient movements, then reached for another. "Sit. Rest. Please." Sarah wanted to argue, to insist she wasn't helpless, but the concern in his eyes stopped her. She settled onto the porch steps, watching as he finished hanging the laundry. "You're good at that," she observed. "Had to learn when I was on my own, before Martha came to help." "How long have you been alone out here?" "5 years. Since I came back from the war." He pinned the last sheet, then came to sit beside her on the steps. "Built this place from nothing. Wanted somewhere I could disappear, where the past couldn't find me. But it did find you. The past always does." "Yeah." He was quiet for a moment. "What about you? What was your life like in Boston?" Sarah felt her throat tighten. "Comfortable, privileged. My father was a banker, very wealthy, very concerned with reputation and appearances." "What happened?" "I fell in love with the wrong man, or thought I did." The bitterness crept into her voice despite her best efforts. "He was charming, handsome, said all the right things, promised to marry me. I believed him." Colton's jaw tightened. "And when you got pregnant?" He laughed in my face, said he already had a wife and 3 children in New York, that I'd been a pleasant diversion, nothing more." Sarah pressed her hand to her belly. "My father threw me out, said I'd shamed the family name. My mother cried but didn't stop him." "I'm sorry." Colton's voice was rough with anger, not at her, but for her. "You deserved better than that. Deserve better than what I can give you." "Don't." Sarah turned to face him. "Don't diminish what you've given me. You've offered me more kindness, more respect in a few weeks than that man ever did in 6 months." Their eyes met and held. Sarah's breath caught at the intensity in his gaze, at the want she saw there, carefully controlled but unmistakable. "Sarah," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, "I need you to know something." "What?" "This marriage. This arrangement, it's not a burden to me. Having you here, He struggled for words. "It's the first time in 5 years I haven't felt completely alone." "I feel the same way," Sarah admitted. "I was so scared when I came here, terrified of what would happen to me, to the baby. And then you appeared like something out of a dream and offered me hope when I had none left." Colton's hand moved, slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted. When she didn't, his fingers brushed against her cheek, gentle as a whisper. "You're beautiful," he said. "I know I shouldn't say that. I know I have no right, but it's true." Sarah leaned into his touch, her heart racing. "You have every right. You're my husband. In name only. Is that what you wanted to stay?" The question hung between them, heavy with possibility. Colton's thumb stroked across her cheekbone, his dark eyes searching hers. "I want whatever you want," he said finally. "I'll take whatever you're willing to give, and I'll never ask for more." Sarah turned her face into his palm, pressing a soft kiss there. "What if I want to give you everything?" Colton's breath hitched. "Sarah, don't say things like that unless you mean them." "I mean it." She covered his hand with hers, holding it against her cheek. "I'm falling for you, Colton Drake. I didn't expect to, didn't plan on it. But every day I'm here, every conversation we have, every kindness you show me, I fall a little bit more." "I'm falling too," he confessed. "So hard I can barely think straight sometimes. But I'm scared." "Of what?" "Of hurting you, of disappointing you, of being the monster everyone thinks I am." "You could never disappoint me," Sarah said fiercely. "And you're not a monster. You're the best man I've ever known." He kissed her then, right there on the porch steps in the afternoon sun. It was soft, tentative, asking permission with every movement. Sarah answered by wrapping her arms around his neck and pulling him closer. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Colton rested his forehead against hers. "We should take this slow," he murmured. "I don't want to rush you, I know, and I appreciate that. But Colton, yeah, don't wait too long." Over the following days, something shifted between them. The careful distance dissolved, replaced by casual touches, lingering glances, moments of intimacy that made Sarah's heart race. Colton would rest his hand on the small of her back as they walked. Sarah would smooth his hair back from his forehead when he came in from working. They sat closer at meals, their knees touching beneath the table. One evening after dinner, they sat together on the porch, watching the sunset paint the mountains in shades of purple and gold. "Tell me about your family," Sarah said, her head resting on Colton's shoulder. "Not much to tell. My pa died when I was young. Ma worked herself to death, trying to keep food on the table. I had 2 brothers, both killed in the war. I'm so sorry. Long time ago now." His arm came around her shoulders, holding her close. "What about you? Any siblings?" "A younger sister, Elizabeth. She was always the good daughter, the one who did everything right." Sarah's voice went soft. "I wonder if she thinks about me sometimes. If she misses me. I'm sure she does. How could she not?" Sarah smiled despite the ache in her chest. "You're sweet. I'm honest." He pressed a kiss to the top of her head. "Your father was a fool to throw you out. His loss is my gain." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching as stars began to appear in the darkening sky. "Colton," Sarah said eventually, "will you tell me about the ranch? How you built it?" He seemed surprised by the question. "Why do you want to know?" "Because it's important to you. Because I want to understand your life here, what you've created." So he told her about buying the land with money he'd saved from before the war, about clearing trees and hauling stones to build the house, about the first harsh winter when he'd nearly frozen to death in a half-finished cabin, about slowly building the herd, earning the trust of a few good men like Buck, creating something solid and lasting from nothing. "Sounds lonely," Sarah observed. "It was, is, or was, before you came." He turned to look at her, his eyes soft in the twilight. "Now it feels like a home." "It feels like home to me too," Sarah whispered. The next day, Colton surprised her by appearing at the kitchen door mid-morning. "Come with me," he said, extending his hand. "I want to show you something." Sarah wiped her hands on her apron and followed him out to the barn. Inside, in one of the stalls, a mare stood over a wobbly-legged foal. "She was born this morning," Colton said softly. "Thought you might like to see her." Sarah moved closer, enchanted by the tiny creature. The foal had a white star on her forehead and dark, liquid eyes. "She's beautiful," Sarah breathed. "She's yours." Sarah turned to stare at him. "What?" "The foal. She's yours. I know you can't ride much right now, but in a few months, after the baby comes, I'll train her for you. She'll be gentle, perfect for a new rider." Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. "Colton, I can't accept this." "Why not?" "It's too much." He stepped closer, his hands settling gently on her shoulders. "Sarah, you're my wife. Everything I have is yours. A horse is nothing." "It's not nothing to me." She reached up to cup his face, feeling the rough stubble beneath her palm. "Thank you for this, for everything." He turned his head to kiss her palm, his eyes never leaving hers. "What do you want to name her?" Sarah looked back at the foal, at her delicate features and bright eyes. "Hope. I want to name her Hope." "Hope it is." They stood there in the barn, surrounded by the smell of hay and horses, and Sarah felt something settle in her chest. This was real. This life, this man, this future they were building together, it was all real. The following Sunday, Martha invited them to attend church in town. "Are you sure?" Sarah asked Colton that morning as she buttoned her dress. "After what happened last time, we're married now, respectable. They can whisper all they want, but they can't turn us away from church." His eyes were hard, determined. "Besides, I won't have you hiding like you've done something wrong. You're my wife, and I'm proud of that." So they went. The church fell silent when they entered. Every head turned, every eye fixed on them as they walked down the aisle. Sarah kept her chin high, her hand tucked into the crook of Colton's arm. They slid into a pew near the back. Colton's presence beside her was solid, reassuring. When the congregation stood to sing, his deep voice rumbled beside her, surprisingly melodic. After the service, as they were leaving, Reverend Matthews approached them. "Mr. Drake, Mrs. Drake," he nodded to each of them. "It's good to see you both." "Reverend," Colton replied, his voice carefully neutral. An older woman stepped forward, her face kind. "Mrs. Drake, I'm Eleanor Hartwell. I wanted to say how lovely you look. When are you due?" Sarah blinked, surprised by the genuine warmth in the woman's voice. 3 months, Mom." "How wonderful. If you need anything at all, you come see me. I've raised 5 children of my own. I know how hard it can be, especially out on a ranch." "Thank you," Sarah managed, touched by the unexpected kindness. As they walked to the wagon, Sarah noticed that while some people still stared with disapproval, others nodded politely. A few women even smiled. "That wasn't as bad as I expected," she said once they were on the road home. "Mrs. Hartwell's husband is on the town council. If she accepts you, others will follow." Colton glanced at her. Besides, you're hard not to like. You're biased. Maybe. Doesn't make it less true. Back at the ranch, they changed out of their church clothes. Sarah was in the kitchen starting dinner when Colton appeared, looking uncertain. "Need any help?" he asked. "You cook?" "Some. Learned by necessity." They worked side by side, Colton chopping vegetables while Sarah prepared the meat. It was domestic, comfortable, and Sarah found herself imagining years of evenings like this, working together to build a life. "What are you smiling about?" Colton asked. "This. Us. It feels nice." He set down his knife and moved behind her, his arms coming around to rest on her pregnant belly. "It does, doesn't it?" Sarah leaned back against his chest, closing her eyes. The baby kicked, and Colton's hands shifted, following the movement. "Does it hurt?" he asked. "When the baby moves like that?" "No, it's strange, but not painful. More like butterfly wings, but stronger." "Can I—" He hesitated. "Can I talk to the baby sometimes? I know it sounds foolish, but it's not foolish." Sarah covered his hands with hers. "I think the baby would like that." So Colton bent down, his lips close to Sarah's belly, and spoke in that deep, gentle voice of his. "Hello, little one. It's me, your papa. I want you to know that I'm going to love you so much. You and your mama, you're everything to me. I'll keep you safe, I promise. Both of you." Sarah felt tears stream down her face, moved beyond words by this giant of a man speaking so tenderly to the child she carried. "I love you," she whispered. "Colton, I love you." He straightened, turning her in his arms to face him. "Say it again. I love you. I love you too." He kissed her softly. "God help me, Sarah. I love you so much it terrifies me." "Tagui, why does it terrify you?" "Because I've never had something this good, something this precious, and I'm afraid I'll lose it. Lose you." Sarah cupped his face in her hands. "You won't lose me. I'm here. I choose to be here. Every single day, I choose you." That night they lay together in Sarah's bed. Their bed now, as Colton had quietly moved his things in over the past week. He held her close, his hand protective on her belly. "Tell me about your dreams," Sarah said softly. "What do you want for our future?" Colton was quiet for so long, she thought he might have fallen asleep. Then he spoke, his voice rough with emotion. "I want to fill this house with children, with laughter. I want to teach our sons to be honorable men, and our daughters to be strong women. I want to grow old with you, watching our grandchildren play in that yard." "That sounds perfect. What about you? What do you want?" "Everything you just said. And maybe one day we could build a school. For the children in the area, I could teach them. You were a teacher." "I wanted to be. My father wouldn't allow it. Said it was beneath our station." "Then we'll build a school," Colton said firmly. "Whatever you want, Sarah. I'll give you the world if I can." Sarah turned in his arms to kiss him. "I don't need the world. I just need you." The weeks continued to pass in a haze of growing love and deepening connection. Sarah's belly swelled larger, and Colton became even more protective if that was possible. He fashioned a rocking chair for the nursery, spending evenings carefully sanding and polishing the wood until it was smooth as silk. Sarah would sit and watch him work, marveling at the care he took, the love evident in every stroke. Martha had begun teaching Sarah how to preserve food for winter, how to manage a ranch household. The older woman had become like a mother to her, filling some of the empty space her own mother had left. "He's different with you," Martha said one afternoon as they worked on canning vegetables. "Softer, happier. I haven't seen him smile this much in all the years I've known him." "He makes me happy too," Sarah admitted. "Good. You both deserve it. Lord knows you've both been through enough." One evening, about a week before the confrontation with the men, Sarah was sitting in the parlor, attempting to sew baby clothes, when she felt a sharp pain in her side. She gasped, and Colton was there instantly, kneeling beside her chair. "What's wrong? Is it the baby?" "I don't know. Just a sharp pain. It's gone now." But Colton was already pulling on his boots. "I'm getting the doctor." "Colton, it was just a twinge. I'm fine. I'm not taking chances. Not with you." He rode into town at a gallop and returned with Dr. Harrison, a middle-aged man with kind eyes and gentle hands. The examination revealed nothing wrong, just normal pregnancy discomfort. But Colton remained on edge for days afterward, watching Sarah like a hawk. "You need to relax," Sarah told him one night. "All this worrying isn't good for you." "Can't help it. The thought of something happening to you." "Nothing's going to happen. The doctor said everything is fine." But Colton pulled her close anyway, holding her like she might disappear if he let go. It was in these quiet moments that Sarah truly understood how much he loved her. Not in grand gestures or flowery words, but in the way he held her at night, the way he looked at her when he thought she wasn't watching, the way he spoke to her unborn child with such tenderness it made her heart ache. She'd come to Montana expecting nothing, hoping for survival at best. Instead, she'd found love. Real, deep, transformative love. And it made everything she'd been through worth it. One afternoon, about a month after their wedding, Sarah was in the kitchen making bread when she heard raised voices outside. She moved to the window and saw Colton facing down 3 men on horseback. Even from a distance, she could tell they meant trouble. "We heard you got yourself a wife, Drake," one of them called out. "Where'd you find her? Mail order bride? My business is my own," Colton replied, his voice dangerously quiet. "That's not what we heard. We heard she came into town pregnant, and you claimed the baby was yours." The man laughed, cruel and mocking. "Everyone knows that's a lie. No woman would willingly bed a monster like you." Sarah saw Colton's hands curl into fists. "You need to leave," he said. "Or what? You're going to kill us like you killed all those boys during the war, like you killed Jack Morrison over a land dispute." "Morrison drew on me first. It was self-defense, and you know it." "Sure it was." The man spat on the ground. "You're nothing but a killer, Drake. And that woman you married, she's nothing but a whore carrying a bastard." Sarah didn't think. She just moved. She was out the door and down the porch steps before she could reconsider, marching toward the group of men with her chin held high. "You want to call me names?" she said, her voice ringing clear in the yard. "Do it to my face." The men looked startled by her sudden appearance. Colton's face had gone pale. "Sarah, go back inside," he said quietly. "No." She moved to stand beside him, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. "I'm tired of people talking about us behind our backs. If they have something to say, they can say it while looking me in the eye." The lead rider's face twisted with contempt. "You really think we're gonna believe that baby is his?" "I don't care what you believe," Sarah shot back. "The truth is, I love my husband. I don't care about his past, about the rumors, about what people say. He's a good man, and he'll be a wonderful father to our child." The words hung in the air, and Sarah realized with a start that she meant them. Somewhere along the way, in the quiet weeks of living together, she'd started to care for this gentle giant of a man. Colton was staring at her, his expression stunned. "Now get off our property," Sarah continued, "before my husband removes you himself." The men exchanged glances, clearly not expecting this level of defiance. Finally, the lead rider pulled on his reins. "This isn't over, Drake," he muttered. "Yes, it is," Colton said, his voice like iron. "Come back here again, and I'll deal with you the way I dealt with Morrison." The threat was clear. The men rode off, their horses kicking up dust. When they were gone, Colton turned to Sarah, his face a mixture of anger and fear. "What were you thinking?" he demanded. "Those men are dangerous. They could have hurt you. They were insulting you, insulting us. I couldn't just stand there." "Sarah, I can handle insults. I've been handling them for years, but I can't." His voice cracked. "I can't handle the thought of you getting hurt because of me." She reached out and took his hand, the first time she'd initiated physical contact with him. His palm was warm, rough with calluses, and his fingers curled around hers like he was afraid she might pull away. "I meant what I said," she told him softly, "about you being a good man, about being a wonderful father. The baby isn't mine, I know, but you've claimed it as yours. You've given us both a home, protection, a future. That makes you more of a father than the man who actually got me pregnant." Colton's thumb stroked over her knuckles, a gentle, almost unconscious gesture. "I don't deserve you. That's not your choice to make. It's mine, and I choose to be here." They stood like that for a long moment, hands linked, the Montana sun warm on their faces. Then Colton raised her hand to his lips and pressed a soft kiss to her knuckles. "Thank you," he whispered, "for defending me, for standing by my side." "That's what wives do," Sarah said, and felt her heart skip when he smiled. As her pregnancy progressed, Colton became increasingly protective. He insisted she rest more, wouldn't let her do any heavy lifting, and fussed over her like a mother hen. It was endearing and frustrating in equal measure. "Colton, I'm pregnant, not an invalid," Sarah protested one afternoon when he tried to carry her up the stairs. "The doctor said you need to be careful. The doctor said I need moderate activity and rest, not complete bed rest." He looked torn, his hands hovering near her waist, ready to catch her if she stumbled. I worry." Sarah softened. I know, but I'm fine. I promise. The baby's fine. Everything is going exactly as it should. As if to prove her point, the baby kicked hard enough that she gasped. What's wrong? Colton's face went white with fear. Nothing, just a very active baby. She took his hand and placed it on her belly. The baby kicked again, right against Colton's palm. His face transformed, lit with wonder and joy. That's incredible, he breathed. So strong. Takes after you, Sarah teased. He looked up at her, his dark eyes soft. I wish I could give you a real marriage. Not this arrangement. Who says this isn't real? The words slipped out before Sarah could think better of them. Colton's breath caught. Sarah, I care about you, she admitted, her heart pounding. More than I expected to. More than I probably should. You deserve someone better, someone without blood on his hands, someone who— She pressed her fingers to his lips, silencing him. Stop telling me what I deserve. Let me decide that for myself. They were so close now, his hand still on her belly, her fingers against his lips. She could feel the warmth of his breath, see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. If I kiss you, Colton said roughly, I won't want to stop. Then don't stop. He kissed her. It wasn't gentle. It was 5 weeks of suppressed longing, of careful distance, of wanting something he'd convinced himself he couldn't have. His lips claimed hers with a hunger that made her knees weak. Sarah's hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer. She'd been kissed before, by the man who'd gotten her pregnant, but it had never been like this. Never this consuming. This right. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Colton rested his forehead against hers. I'm falling in love with you, he whispered. I've been trying not to, but I can't help it. Good, Sarah replied, because I'm falling in love with you too. He kissed her again, softer this time, reverent. Then he swept her into his arms, ignoring her protests, and carried her upstairs. But instead of taking her to his room, he laid her gently on her bed and sat beside her, his hand finding hers. When you're ready, he said quietly. When you want more than this, you tell me. Until then, I'm content just to be near you. Sarah's heart swelled. Stay with me tonight? Just hold me? I'd like nothing more. He lay down beside her, fully clothed, and gathered her into his arms. Sarah settled against his chest, feeling safe and cherished in a way she'd never experienced before. Colton, she whispered, thank you for everything. His arms tightened around her. Thank you. No, Sarah. For giving me a reason to be better, for making me feel like I might deserve happiness after all. They fell asleep like that, wrapped in each other's arms, the baby moving between them. The next few weeks were the happiest of Sarah's life. Colton still worked the ranch during the day, but now he came home to her kisses, her laughter, her presence in every corner of his life. They talked for hours, sharing stories of their pasts, their hopes for the future. Sarah learned about his childhood, about growing up poor in Georgia, about the war that had taken so much from him. She learned about the nightmares that still haunted him, the guilt he carried for the lives he'd taken. In turn, she told him about Boston, about her strict father and the scandal that had destroyed her family's reputation, about the man who'd seduced and abandoned her, leaving her to face the consequences alone. I'm glad he left, Colton said fiercely, because it brought you to me. They grew closer every day, but Colton remained true to his word. He held her at night, kissed her until she was breathless, but never pushed for more. I want you to feel safe with me, he explained. Want you to know I'll never take anything you're not ready to give. But Sarah was ready. More than ready. She wanted this man, wanted the real marriage they'd both been dancing around. One evening, about 2 months after their wedding, Sarah made her decision. Colton was in his room getting ready for bed when she knocked on his door. Come in, he called. She entered to find him shirtless, water still gleaming on his chest from washing. The sight of him stole her breath. He was magnificent, all muscle and strength, the scars that marked his body only adding to his appeal. Sarah, his voice was uncertain. Is everything all right? I want you, she said simply. I want to be your wife in every way. He crossed the room in 3 strides, his hands cupping her face. Are you sure? We don't have to— I'm sure. She rose on her toes to kiss him. Make love to me, Colton, please. He groaned against her lips, his control finally breaking. He lifted her in his arms and carried her to his bed, laying her down with infinite gentleness. You're so beautiful, he whispered, his hands trembling as they worked the buttons of her nightgown. I'll be gentle, I promise. And he was. So gentle, so reverent, treating her like something precious and fragile. He learned every inch of her body, discovering what made her gasp, what made her moan. When he finally joined with her, it was with exquisite slowness, his eyes never leaving hers. I love you, he breathed against her lips. God help me, Sarah. I love you so much. I love you too, she gasped, her body arching into his. Always. Indeed, they moved together in perfect rhythm, the baby between them, a reminder of the family they were becoming. When Sarah shattered in his arms, Colton was right there with her, his face buried in her neck as he whispered her name like a prayer. Afterward, he held her close, his hand resting possessively on her belly. Are you all right? He asked. Did I hurt you? No, Sarah smiled. You were perfect. It was perfect. He kissed her temple, her cheek, her lips. This is real now. Us, this marriage. It's been real since the moment you offered me your hand in Silver Creek, Sarah corrected. I just didn't know it yet. 2 months later, Sarah went into labor. It happened in the middle of the night. She woke Colton with a gasp, clutching her belly as the first contraction hit. The baby, she managed. It's coming. Colton was out of bed in an instant, pulling on his pants and boots. I'll get the midwife. There's no time. Another contraction hit, stronger than the first. Colton, I don't think there's time. Fear flashed across his face, quickly replaced by determination. All right. We can do this. I've delivered calves, foals. Can't be that different. That is not reassuring. Sarah half laughed, half cried, but he was already moving, getting clean sheets, boiling water, doing everything he could remember from helping with births on the ranch. The labor was hard, painful, exhausting. Sarah squeezed Colton's hand so tight she thought she might break bones, but he never complained. He stayed by her side the entire time, coaching her through contractions, whispering encouragement. You're doing so well, he murmured, so strong. Just a little more, sweetheart. Finally, as dawn light streamed through the window, Sarah gave one final push and heard the most beautiful sound in the world, a baby's cry. It's a girl, Colton said, his voice thick with emotion. He held the tiny, squirming baby in his large hands, looking down at her with absolute wonder. Sarah, she's perfect. He cleaned the baby gently, wrapped her in a soft blanket, and placed her in Sarah's arms. Sarah looked down at her daughter, at the tiny face and delicate features, and fell instantly, completely in love. Hello, little one, she whispered. I'm your mama. The baby opened her eyes, dark like Colton's, and seemed to look right at her. She's beautiful, Colton said softly. What should we name her? Sarah looked up at him, at this man who had claimed this child as his own, who had given them both a home and a future. Grace, she said, because that's what you gave us. Grace. Colton's eyes filled with tears. He leaned down and kissed Sarah's forehead, then the baby's. Grace Drake, he said. Welcome to the world, little one. I'm your papa, and I promise I will love you and protect you every day of my life. And in that moment, Sarah knew with absolute certainty that they were a family. Not because of blood or biology, but because of choice, because of love. The first few weeks with Grace were exhausting and wonderful in equal measure. The baby was healthy and strong, with a powerful set of lungs and an appetite to match. Colton was surprisingly good with her, his large hands gentle as he cradled her small body. I'm afraid I'll break her, he admitted one night as he rocked Grace to sleep. You won't, Sarah assured him from the bed where she was resting. You're perfect with her. He looked down at the baby in his arms, his face soft with love. She looks like you. She has your eyes. Sarah, she doesn't. She has your eyes, Sarah repeated firmly. Dark and beautiful. She's ours, Colton, yours and mine. That's all that matters. He smiled, that rare, gentle smile that transformed his face. Ours, he agreed. A month after Grace was born, they ventured into Silver Creek for supplies. Sarah held Grace against her chest, wrapped in a soft blanket, while Colton walked beside her, his hand on the small of her back. Protective, possessive. The whispers started immediately. That's her, the one who came here pregnant. I heard the baby came early, 7 months into the marriage. No shame at all, parading around like that. Sarah kept her head high, refusing to let them see her flinch. But Colton had no such restraint. He stopped in the middle of the street and turned to face the crowd that had gathered. That's right, he said, his voice carrying across the square. This is my wife, Sarah, and this is my daughter, Grace. Anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with me directly. The silence that followed was deafening. No one dared speak. No one dared challenge the most feared man in the territory. Then Sarah did something that shocked everyone. She stood on her toes and kissed Colton, right there in the middle of town. A real kiss, full of love and promise. When she pulled back, Colton was smiling. "I love you," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "and I'm proud to be your wife." "I love you too," he replied, his hand cupping her face. "Both of you, my girls." They walked through town after that, side by side, heads held high. And if people whispered, well, they didn't care. They had each other, and that was enough. That night, after Grace was asleep in her cradle, Sarah and Colton lay together in bed. "Do you ever regret it?" Sarah asked quietly. "Taking us in, marrying me?" Colton pulled her closer, his hand splaying across her stomach. "Never. You and Grace are the best things that ever happened to me. You gave me a family, a purpose, a reason to be better. You gave us the same thing," Sarah whispered. "A home, safety, love." He kissed her, slow and deep. "I want more children with you. If you want that too." Sarah's heart swelled. "I want that. I want to fill this house with babies, to build a life together." "Then that's what we'll do." He rolled her beneath him, his eyes dark with desire. "Starting now." Sarah laughed, pulling him down for another kiss. "Starting now," she agreed. 5 years later, Sarah stood on the porch of the Triple D Ranch, watching as Grace chased her younger brother through the yard. "Careful!" she called. "Don't go too close to the creek." "We won't, Mama," Grace called back, her dark hair flying behind her. Sarah smiled, her hand resting on her very pregnant belly. Baby number 3 would be here any day now, and she couldn't wait. Strong arms wrapped around her from behind, and Colton's chin rested on her shoulder. "Happy," he murmured. "More than I ever thought possible," Sarah replied, leaning back against his solid chest. "Me too." He pressed a kiss to her neck. "You know, the whole territory's still talking about us." "Let them talk. They're saying you tamed the beast of Silver Creek, that you turned a monster into a family man." Sarah turned in his arms, looking up into the face she loved more than anything, the face that was no longer hard and cold, but warm and open. "They're wrong," she said softly. "You were never a monster. You just needed someone to see the man beneath the scars." "And you were never a woman no one wanted," Colton replied, his hand gentle on her belly. "You were just waiting for the right man to claim you." "That child is mine," Sarah quoted, remembering those words that had changed everything. "You said it in Silver Creek when everyone else had turned their backs, and I meant it. Grace is mine. This one is mine." He pressed a kiss to her belly. "Every child we have will be mine, because they're part of you, and you're the other half of my soul." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "I love you so much. I love you too, forever." They stood like that, wrapped in each other's arms, watching their children play in the yard of the home they'd built together. Sarah thought back to that day in Silver Creek, when she'd been alone and afraid, with nowhere to go and no one to help her. When a mountain of a man had offered his hand and changed her life forever. She'd been rejected, shunned, called names. But Colton had looked past all of that and seen the woman she truly was. He'd claimed her child as his own, given them both his name and his protection, and somewhere along the way had given them his heart. They said she was pregnant, and no one wanted her, until the most feared cowboy in the territory said those 4 life-changing words, "That child is mine." And in doing so, he'd claimed not just the baby, but Sarah's heart, her future, her forever. She'd come to Montana with nothing but a carpet bag and a prayer. She'd found a home, a family, and a love that would last a lifetime. And as the Montana sun set over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Sarah knew she wouldn't change a single thing about her journey, because every hardship, every rejection, every tear had led her here, to this man, to this family, to this love, and it was worth it all.